welcome to our third, um, I was going to say episode, but welcome to our third part of our PWN Vote series. So happy that everybody is joining us and here to talk about how the power of the HIV vote is still alive, especially after a major blow to our community, where the Supreme Court recently overturned the Voter Rights Act. We've been discussing this for a few months now, but today we're actually going to get into a little bit more detail and discussion with our leaders and experts on the ground who will really come in and share this overall impact on communities that we are a part of and that we serve. So I'm so excited to have this discussion with y'all, and please continue to drop your name in the chat and let us know who is in the room. Next slide. Awesome. So if you are new to our space or you are now just getting involved in PWN, who is Positive Women's Network? It's great to know that Positive Women Network is a national multicultural network led by and for women, trans and cisgender, diverse, and transgender people living with HIV in the United States. So we're a national organization. And PWN USA looks at the HIV epidemic with a racial justice, a gender justice lens. And we actually just celebrated our 18th birthday last week. If you were there, then you know it was a great time, and we are so excited to continue to do this work and have been doing this work diligently and with our community for the past 18 years. Next slide. About PWN votes, as I mentioned, this is our third iteration of this series, our third part of this series. And PWN votes is PWN USA's approach to building long-term political power by engaging voters to advance racial, gender, and reproductive justice, to transform our systems, and to shift the narrative. We do this work alongside you all, our members, our allies, and our communities who stand beside us to have conversations about issues that matter the most to people who are living with HIV and people who are with us in this fight. Voting alone, we recognize that will not get us to liberation. It's a tactic to leverage our collective power, to block legislators from finding more ways to strip away our voice and our rights. Next slide. So our history when it comes to PWN's involvement in voting and electoral organizing. So since 2016, PWN USA has led voter mobilization efforts across the country to elevate our issues impacting our people living with HIV. And our members have spearheaded voter campaigns across states like PA, Colorado, and Texas, and many other states as well. But paying over 200 people living with HIV and allies in their work since 2022. And if you would like to learn more about how to get involved in our integrated voter election campaigns, then please click this link. I'm sure someone will drop it in the chat, because we are actively looking for folks to volunteer and join our campaigns this season. Next slide. So logistics-wise, we are recording this session, but we are not live streaming. So this was a little error on here, but we are recording. If you do not want to be recorded, or you can turn your camera off, as well as change your name to a pseudonym that you feel more comfortable with using. But we are all in a safe space, and we know each other. AI bots will be removed, so we have folks who are monitoring to ensure that no AI recorders are in our space who might send our recordings and conversations outward to people outside of our organization. Closed captioning is enabled, so if you need it, it's at the bottom. There's a CC in a little square box. All you have to do is click it, and you will have this discussion today transcribed. And feel free to use the chat. I love it when folks use the chat and the emojis and the little interacting things. I love seeing the hearts come up on y'all screen. So please use the chat and interact with us, especially with the panelists, and let them know that you're engaged in a discussion and that you want to possibly hear more, or you're like, agreeing or disagreeing, whatever it is, interact. And then, of course, we're in meeting mode, Zoom, so you can always mute and unmute yourself using *6. You can use the raise your hand feature if you want to hop in the queue, or just use the chat if you have something that you want to add to the discussion. Next slide. Our agenda for today. So we just did our welcome and introduction. Folks, if you are just joining us, I see folks are coming in. So if you are just joining us, please drop your name and your pronouns and where you're joining from in the chat to get acclimated to the space. I'm going to give you all a grounding, myself and Maxx in voter suppression. That's what the slides are around. If you have any questions while we're going through the slides, you can put them in the chat. But we will have a facilitated discussion after the slides with our lovely panelists, where you will actually get the opportunity to ask them questions, pick their brain, and really get into more discussion as a collective, as a community. And then we have a call to action for y'all, and then some next steps, of course. Next slide. So here are your presenters today. Y'all know me, I'm Antoinette. I'm the National Field Organizer with PWN. And I am also a dandelion with 31 years of lived experience in navigating this world. Maxx Boykin is our amazing accomplice and ally in this fight. From Black South Rising and the Save HIV funding, has been leading amazing work and activating community in that area and arena. And then we have Kenisha Harris, PWN Louisiana chapter member, and she is also the executive director of Follow the Light Advocacy and LGBTQ Resource Center, and also a future board member at PWN. So we're so excited for these folks. And I just can't wait to get to our discussion portion. The slides are good. Like, the slides are juicy, but the discussion is where all the meat lives. So let's get there. Next slide. Our goals for our time today is, by the time we are finished today, participants will learn about the most pressing threats to voter rights and in 2026, and then understand the power in the HIV vote and how to utilize it. Next slide. So now let's get into our grounding in voter suppression and where we are at. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull my slides up. And why we are here. So why are voter rights under attack? We are all asking this question. Many of us want to know, and have had to sit with the shocker of what is happening, especially when it happened. It was a shell shock to so many people in community. But just to give a little bit of background, the Voter Rights Act of 1965, it was created because states used laws and policies to prevent Black people from voting. And as Black voter participation and representation increased, new barriers emerged through courts, legislatures, and redistricting process. And we also recognize how voting rights often disproportionately impacts marginalized communities. So when we ask, why are voting rights under attack? The short answer is power. But if you have another answer outside of that, because that's my short answer. It's a power dynamic. It's a fight for power and who has power and who gets to control the power narrative in society. But if you have other reasons why you believe voter rights are under attack, it could be anything. There's no wrong answer. Please drop it in the chat. And then when we look at communities, when communities have a voice at the ballot box, they have greater power to shape decisions about healthcare, about housing, education, HIV funding, and other policies that impact our lives. When that political power is weakened, communities often have less influence over the decisions that are being made about our health, our well-being, and our future. And this has happened for decades. Black voters across the South has actively transformed the elections or the direction of elections through our organizing, through voter registration drives, through coalition building, through showing up at the ballot box. And something that I love hearing more recently from our membership is when our members are actively working the polls or they're involved in their local elections in some way. That always excites me because you're like involved and you're looped in, you know, in the back end. But that work has helped shape local elections, state legislature, congressional races, and even national elections. And as Black political participation and marginalized participation has grown, so has the ability of Black and Brown and other communities to influence decisions that impact our lives. So what we are seeing today is happening in the context of demographic change, growing Black political power, and increased civic participation among communities that have historically been pushed to the margins. So it has and is going to disproportionately impact, like I named, young voters, rural communities, folks who do not have, you know, who have already challenges getting access to certain things, people with disabilities, of course, LGBTQ people, and people in poverty. Next slide. So as we get into the Louisiana versus Callais, what we know is, of course, in the 6-3 decision, the U.S. Supreme Court finished gutting the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And in late April, and this happened in late April, when, of course, many of us felt it. But the first big hit was Shelby County versus Holder in 2013. So that case gutted the pre-clearance requirements and opened the door to the flood of voter suppression laws and vote dilution tactics that have severely harmed Black voter power, especially in the U.S. South. But the Callais, Louisiana decision kind of like put the hammer to the nail, and finished the job at destroying it by severely limiting Section 2. So Section 2 of the Voter Rights Act was supposed to protect against racial vote dilution, a tactic where states draw electoral maps to reduce the voting power of Black and Brown communities. And then the court's ruling effectively rewrote Section 2, making it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to challenge electoral maps and locking Black and Brown communities out of voting power going forward. Next slide. So I love this slide because redistricting is about representation. Like, it's specifically to keep people from voting. It's specifically to limit the number of Black voters there are, Latino voters there are. Like, it's specifically to X out a certain community. And it's important to recognize that this will have a impact. As I mentioned, it will have a major impact on southern states, and specifically named Louisiana. So the South is home to a large share of the nation's Black population, which we know, and it's also home to a disproportionate share of people living with HIV, which is something else that we recognize and know. And at the same time, we've seen growing Black political participation, increased political power in many, many southern states. We've seen laws get passed that we have, pushed through legislation. People get voted into position. And a great example of this is just giving y'all a little bit of like history that I've learned while going through and working on this slide deck is like Louisiana in itself being a powerful example, and why they chose to use Louisiana as an example. Because although Black residents make up nearly 1/3 of the state's population, for years, Black voters had only one majority Black congressional district in Louisiana out of 6. And then in 2022, a federal court ruled that Louisiana's congressional map likely violated Section 2, which we were just talking about on the previous slide, of the Voter Rights Act. So they used Section 2 to their defense, and they did this in order to get a second congressional district, majority Black congressional district. So now they had District 2 and District 6. And that new map led to the election of 2 Black members of Congress from Louisiana in the 2024 election cycle. But recently, after the overturn of the Voter Rights Act, Governor Jeff Landry, look, yo, my Louisiana folks, the Louisiana chapter, they got a nickname for him. They call him Jeff Crow, and they could tell you why on the side, but that John had me cackling. But
we call him Jeff Clandry. It's Jeff Clandry.
Jeff Clandry, because of the way he behaves and how he acts towards marginalized communities. So we get it. He immediately redrew the lines after the overturn of Section 2. And he signed a new map into law that dismantled one of those districts that Louisianans worked so hard to create. And by him doing that, he ultimately created an additional Republican seat. So the response to that tells us something extremely important, that this fight wasn't over whether Black communities existed, because we're going to continue to exist. But the fight was over Black communities, if Black communities would have the political power to determine, or the political power needed to determine the outcome. And that's not a coincidence, and neither is the backlash that we're seeing when communities become more enraged and more organized and more influential at the ballot box, and how we have the power to shape decisions and to make change. And then the reason that I love this slide and I love Fannie Lou Hamer is because she reminded us, like, I question America. Is this America? Because we are constantly wondering, and this quote is from 1964, but like, she's constantly wondering, like, where is the democracy? Like, where is the people, or the community being for the people? And although the quote is from 1964, we recognize that the tactics may change, but the fight over who gets the power and who is represented will continue. And so I ask people in the space, like, you don't have to answer now, just food for thought. If politicians did not believe Black votes matter, why would so much effort be spent trying to redraw maps and, like, restrict who has access to the ballot? So just sit with that a little bit, and you can even engage in the chat if you have any thoughts. Next slide. So if we take a look at this wonderful tree, and look at the bottom where the roots are, I call this the tree of influence. But if we look at the roots are where the voting power lies. And then everything else grows from there. So when communities have voting power, we have representation, we have influence, we have the ability to hold decision makers accountable. And that shapes whether resources flow into our communities or away from our communities. And the reason why this matters is because attacks on voting rights, they rarely happen in isolation. They often happen and they grow and they show up alongside of healthcare cuts, anti-LGBTQ legislation, restrictions to bodily autonomy, and then other criminalizing policies that harm Black and Brown folks. And like for us, for those of us who are living with HIV and who are Black, who are queer, who are trans, these communities are deeply interconnected. And when communities who are already close to the margins lose their power, they often lose or resources that often result to shorter lifespans and not having the ability to live fully. And that's why voting rights are not just about elections. That's why they're so much deeper than that. They're about healthcare. They're about people living with HIV. They're about racial justice, and they're about our ability to shape the conditions of our lives for ourselves. Next slide. And now I'm going to pass it to Maxx to take it away.
Hey, y'all.
Shout out to Antoinette. That was absolutely like a wonderful breakdown of what we're currently dealing with. And just to answer that question that you put out there is, of course, Black votes definitely matter. Our votes matter. And we're going to go a little bit, give a little bit more background and history before we open it up to the larger panel. But yeah, my name is Maxx Boykin. I am the movement director for Black South Rising and also the manager of the Save HIV funding campaign. I'm happy to be here, happy to talk to y'all. That picture there is actually a picture of me trying to fight for access to voting, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But that happened back in 2018, and we can keep it going to the next slide. So how we get here? Antoinette did an excellent job of explaining an act, but I want to give a little bit more background for folks. One on the history both of the Voting Rights Act, and people can check this link that I'm about to drop in the chat for everyone. First one is from NAACP's Legal Defense Fund, and that gives a real background of like how in which this came about in the ways in which this came together. I was slowing down just a little bit there, but also we got this piece around from CNN that gives a background of actually the history going back to the foundings of this country. And we understand that slavery is a big part of this, of course, where they did not see us as full citizens. And then when we come into that post the Civil Wars, we also have the 13th, 4th, and 15th Amendment, which are important for the access to rights and should have gave Black folks the rights to have that access at that time. But because of the reign of Jim Crow and different massacres that were done in, and this is what the violence, we always got to remember, violence is many times the way in which they do, or through different legislations to take power away from communities. And then we go through the Jim Crow laws, the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Dawes Act, and then we get different states creating constitutional conventions and also continued massacres against folks, making it harder for them to even have access to voting. But see, during that time, people are still fighting back, and specifically post World War II, where a lot of our folks they went over to, overseas, they seen all this, is like, hey, I should have access to all these things that other soldiers are having as well, that we're fighting for our civil rights as well. And one of the other pictures on here is also the March on Washington, which actually happened in 1963, which leads and pushes, as a lot of civil rights leaders said at that time, we need to make sure that our elected officials have the power to make sure that they wanted to have some of these things happen. And for us to be able to have that happen, there was the March on Washington to show that power and force that we're going to talk a little bit more about. Is showing that power is always important, and how in which we do that with intersectional communities. And then but we also see with the Civil Rights Act and with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, that still doesn't actually give our folks access to voting. And the reason I can also say this is not because I lived during this time, but my parents were born actually in this in the late 50s and early 60s. They were born in the state of Alabama. The Selma March is between where my father is born in Selma to where my mother was living and born in Montgomery. That was the importance and also the understanding of them seeing Bloody Sunday and my father being able to tell me the real horrors that he saw in Edmund Pettus Bridge, to also see the positive and the changes that they were also able to make while going from segregated schools to then being able to see people actually be able to vote, to be able to be and be part of the first classes of folks that were actually in desegregated places. So taking that is also understand that they are able to put the Voting Rights Act in 1965, and all those pieces are brought together. Next slide, please. We also see a continuation of trying to make sure over 250,000 people got access to voting rights on that day. And those are important pieces for us to be able to get access to that to be able to have that power. But when we also see the in modern times, there was also fights to take away access to that. We had extensions to the Voting Rights Act in 2006, actually under President Bush. But we saw the Shelby County piece that Antoinette talked about in 2013 was first the start of that. We saw other pushes when we talked about different pieces around the different elections that were going on. But after 2021, and then when the creation of what we'll talk a little bit more is 2020, 25, the Louisiana versus Callais piece, which we highlight. Antoinette did a great job talking about Louisiana, but also to see all these different districts that sit in these, most of them sitting in the southern part of the United States, that would be taking power away. And we also understand that they're trying to take another district away from Alabama as well. And that hits also home because this hits what is historically, even if you look at the map to everyone's left, you'll see if you look at Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and then that part from Louisiana going up through Arkansas, you also see this is connected to what is also the historical black belt of the country. And then actually trying to dilute the power from those folks to be able to have that. Next slide, please. So why all this important? Why is it important to think about this? I talked about Project 2025. And we talked about a little bit about the political determinants of health, but the political determinants of health is a space that Vanita Ray and I have had a chance, and I know many of y'all know Vanita well here, to talk about how in which we do this. And Project 2025 was removing federal civil protections for millions of Americans. It was weaponizing civil rights laws. It was gutting the education system, perpetuating sex discrimination, evaluating, and actually making us closer to war and further away from actually healthy America. All of that we have seen, and actually, is Vanita said in a recent training we did, 75% of that's already or even more, almost 95% of it is actually in place. And what we have to do is also work to create plans that push back against this. Next slide. And with thinking that is we have to create this political determinants of health, is we understand that policies create this, and policies are created by elected officials that many times go into official in this country by being politicians. And so we have to talk about these are the conditions that get us where we are. And we understand that the social determinants of health are very important, but we talk about the political determinants of health, which was a book written by Dr. Daniel Dawes at Morehouse. Also here in Atlanta, I don't know if you know, Antoinette and I are heavy here showing Georgia love, but I know we got folks in Louisiana about to come on as well. But we also want to know, we have to talk about laws, policies, government, and we have to talk about voter suppression. We have to talk about them together. Our health is tied to our access to proper policies. And we can see it just by other countries that have better policies, that have better health outcomes, because they put those in place. And we have also seen, and we have historically had a racist system on our healthcare system, a racist system around our access to voting. And that is because they do not want Black people to have power. They want to continue to take away the power of the community that has also helped build this country, especially here in the South. So next slide. I want folks to be able to understand and think about, as we're using these, that there are some, key differences around political determinants of health and social determinants of health. We won't get as much into those. Next slide. But we want to make sure that people are thinking about some of the upstream pieces that are flowing to what happens and makes people understand what the different like social determinants of health are. Particularly when we're thinking about, we want to, it's like people's incomes are important. We have all these things, but how do we get there? How do we get to that change? And you'll see, as that's highlighted in this slide, which you got to build political power. Next slide. And when we talk about political power, I want to give a big shout out to HIV Racial Justice Now, which predates Black South Rising, and it was also a collective I was a part of. But power is a manifestation of our collective visions into coordinated action. Power is what happens when we build together. It is important to think about power is power is not something we just do by ourselves. We have to do it in the context of understanding. And political power means that when an individual or group of people hold authority in a nation's government, but it's also, you don't have to be an actual person with a official position. You don't have to be a senator, an elected official, a mayor to have political power. You can use different resources that you have to do so. And many times when we're talking about our power, we may not have all the money in the world, but we do have is people. And we can always continue to build our people together. Next slide. For us at Black South Rising, we had to think a lot, but like, what do we need when we're talking about building political power? And we also know many of the members of PWN and its allies are also trying to think about how we are building power in our communities to do so. And we talked about centering some of our important values, at least for Black South Rising, and taking that as like Black South Rising centers Black Southerners to ensure our voices are heard and our interests are prioritized over the violent political and corporate systems. We also have to understand there's a political agenda, but there's also a corporate agenda that, especially in the time of Trump, that is even further caramelizing into a thing that we're seeing more oligarchs in charge and more power that is not actually going to the people that need it the most. And then what we want to be able to do is communicate and get to our communities is to understand the political determinants of health, but also act through the different actions that folks are talking about. So voting, advocacy, mutual aid, and so much more. We understand that power is the ability to control a circumstance, and we want to be able to control the circumstances that are coming for our people. So how do we build political power? Next slide. There's only one way that I always think about it. We got to organize. You see Dr. King in the back over here behind my Atlanta United flag. But also, the Supreme Task is we want to be transformed in the service of the work. I want to give a big shout out to Mary Hooks, who was also, if you take it all the way back to the beginning of when I started this presentation, she was there when I was getting arrested that day. Was we want to make sure that we are standing up for voting rights. And that doesn't mean that we just vote. It doesn't mean that we just advocate. It means that we also have to talk to our people. We have to engage them about engaging more. We're going to have some more. I know we're going to talk about this in the future part of the voting rights series. Also, Save HIV Funding is going to do this. We talk about different levels of canvassing, engaging door to door in the community, having house parties, being able to engage more and more people to engage them to go out and vote, but also to engage in the political process continuously, going to civil meetings, going to their local meetings, making sure that they're going to the right white council meetings and putting fire on them about any cuts to ADAP. All of those things are actually interconnected to our the political power for our communities, but also the health for our communities. Thank y'all for having me. And I know we're about to have an amazing plenary, so I'm going to stop talking and let us get to the good stuff.
Thank you so much, Max, for those slides. That was really amazing. And I truly, truly appreciate you really not just giving us the historical context, but really grounding us in where our power lies and how we can utilize our power to continue to push for change, especially recognizing that the times are difficult. This shit is not easy. And something else that I love that you highlighted was just your own advocacy and how you literally got arrested for fighting for voter rights. So thank you so much. So I'm excited to welcome Kenisha and Maxx back to the space and for us to get into our discussion. So I want to start with Kenisha because me and Maxx talked enough. And you talked about such great things on our preparation call leading up to this. But what do you want to name about how we got here, that especially being in Louisiana on the ground, that me and Maxx might have missed or not have mentioned?
So basically, Maxx mentioned basically everything that has been going on, but to add on into further context, right? Since Louisiana was founded back in the late 1800s, there were only 4 Black people that were elected in Congress. 2 of them are seated at this right now, which is Cleo Fields, the district that is currently being erased, and Troy Carter, which district they are going to keep, and they're going to which is going to force Cleo Fields and Troy Carter to fight each other for that seat. And the whole and again to repeat what was said, the purpose of Louisiana having a second Black congressional district, but a second Black congressional district, because of the fact that out of all of the southern states, we are the second most populous amongst Black people in all of the southern states. The most populous is Alabama, and you see what they're trying to do in Alabama, and they are trying their damnedest out there in Alabama but every which way they turn, they're getting shut down by the Supreme Court, which is crazy to me, given the fact that you basically use us as a catalyst to gut the Voting Rights Act, but every which way they do what they do out there in Alabama to that they have out there, y'all keep shutting them down, which is wild to me. And like we understand that especially in Louisiana, that it is important that we be properly represented, especially in a state like Louisiana, where you have a gut who I mean, good Lord, like you have a governor like Jeff Landry who does not give a damn about education, who his form of education is putting the fucking Ten Commandments. Oh Lord, excuse me for cursing, but his form of education is putting the Ten Commandments in the classroom. If anybody remembers the state passing the Ten Commandments law, which still has not been enforced yet. Keyword yet. But I live in a state where we are damn near close to the bottom of almost everything. And the main thing y'all won't focus on is diluting black political power. I mean, we got bigger fish to fry than to deal with. We got bigger fish to fry to deal with than to deal with trying to take away people's power and also trying to be a Trump minion, because that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what they are. They're a bunch of Trump minions who are trying to basically shut every minority and not give any minority, doesn't matter if you're black, Asian, Latino, any member of the LGBT community. They're not trying to give nobody no voice at all. Period. Doesn't matter how you look it, shape it, flip it, smack it, rub it down. Doesn't matter what it is. And they're using the Deep South as a as an incubator of sorts to basically shape what is going to happen in the near future to decades to come. And it's going to make it even harder for any kind of leadership, especially like black leadership, to reverse all those things. Because the fact that it again it when this country makes decisions like this, it's going to take decades to reverse. Like decades to reverse. By that time, most of us will not be here when change actually happens. So therefore, we need to demand change now. We need to demand change now because we know for a fact that we cannot go back to the times of Jim Crow. We are I have not experienced it. My mom experienced it. My grandmother experienced it. My great grandmother, God bless her soul, she is from St. Francisville, Louisiana. She lived around towards Jim Crow, and she educated me when I was 9 years old about the times of Jim Crow. Long before I was able to learn about Jim Crow in the book. So we need to, as minority people, need to start we need to start putting our foot down. I understand that what happened in the 2024 election happened what happened. It happened, y'all. It happened. But at the same time, like we cannot afford to sit. We cannot afford to sit on our hands and let the bullshit happen. We cannot afford to sit on our hands.
Thank you for that, Kenisha. You said such great nuggets. I truly appreciate you. And yeah, we won't go back. Something else that you named that really stuck out was like the amount of labor that is going to take for us to undo what has been done, like the harm that this is going to cause and continue to cause until this administration is out of the way. But the we should not have to wait until the administration is gone for us to get to work now, for us to start preparing and planning for uh, ways that we bring our rights back to community. Maxx, is there anything that you may have wanted to name that we didn't cover in the slides that you want to uplift now before we move on to the next question?
No, go ahead.
Okay, awesome. Thank y'all. So just going into the next question, I'm actually coming back to you, Kenisha. Something that PW1 recognizes is intersectionality. And intersectionality is important because it moves us from talking about voting rights in a theory to understanding how they show up in people's everyday lives. And one of like the communities that we recognize at an intersectional lens is people living with HIV. But we know that folks are living with HIV and trans folks are living with HIV and LGBTQ plus folks are living with HIV and homeless folks are living with HIV and struggling with mental health. Like there's so much, and black and brown, because I'm naming like intersectional and systemics as well, but recognizing that so many of our lived experience crosses over and connects. Um, how do you see intersectionality showing up in voter suppression efforts?
I say all the time, like, I am a black transgender woman. I am a black transgender woman that so happen to be living with HIV, right? Um, I am my whole life, my livelihood is a big red X. It's a big strike because the fact that I'm black, I'm trans, I'm a woman, and a person that's living with HIV. So basically, in a nutshell, they're trying to eradicate me altogether. So when we talk about voting, as far as like what politicians or what these politicians are doing to basically take our voices away, they're taking away the level of multiple issues and multiple minorities away from who can represent us and move this country forward or move your state forward. They're not trying to hear that. These these white folks, these white folks are not trying to hear that. They're really not. They don't care. They don't care if you got HIV. It's because it's obvious they do not care about you living with HIV if they wasn't slashing millions of dollars of funding for Ryan White and ADAP services, making organization like local, especially local organizations down here in New Orleans, strapping and scrambling to try to get funding to keep their doors open, simply just to keep their doors open. An organization that I used to volunteer for, Brotherhood Incorporated in New Orleans, I just recently talked to a friend of mine who works there, and they were like they are trying to they're trying to continue to do the work with the limited amount of resources that they have, making sure that testing is still going on, making sure that they're passing out condoms, and Donald Trump just did away with the free condom program, which was utterly ridiculous. That's the latest thing that he did was to get rid of the free condom program. That was another hit. That was another hit to HIV prevention and all that. So these people do not care. These people do not care. But the thing is, we need to start leaning on our intersectionalities to start making them feel it in the polls. We need to start making them feel it in the polls. You're not about to erase my black trans female body who is living with HIV off this planet and out of this country. You're not about to erase me.
Kenisha, I love everything that you shared. And when you were talking, it just made me think about how two things. One being like how much more power we actually have because we are moving um, policies and we're electoral organizing through an intersectional lens, which gives us the opportunity to advocate for multiple issues out of one body. So that's really powerful. And I love that you named that. And then as I'm about to pass it to Max, something else that I thought about when you were speaking was like, that's how my mama raised me. I don't know if y'all's parents like told y'all growing up, especially as they were preparing y'all for the real world, as a young person, especially a black person, they were like, you already have strikes against you. Like you are already black, so you have one
Mm-hmm.
strike. Now you're already a woman, you have two strikes, and now you already for me in my situation, I was already living with HIV. So my mom would be like, you already got three strikes against you. You can't do nothing else. You can't get in no other trouble. So that really shows how like structural barriers play a part in the way that like culturally we raise up our children in order to protect them, but also like recognizing like you already got so much up against, like you're up against so much. And one of
Mm-hmm.
those other things is now like voter rights. So, for us to actively get our rights. So as I'm passing it to Max, I'm asking the same question as far as like how how do you see intersectionality showing up, and even deeper, like how do we use that to our advantage or to our power, especially because you talked about the social determinants of power, the social determinants of health and how they play into the political determinants of health.
Yeah, thank you for that, Antoinette and Kenisha. Excellent job of breaking that down and any intersectionalities. The thing in particularly thinking about how we use intersectionality as our strength is that we got to use our differences as our strength. As uh, the activist and longtime organizer Fred Hampton said, we don't fight fire with fire, we fight fire with water. You don't fight it with we don't fight fear with fear. We fight it with bringing our communities together. We don't fight as he said, we don't fight racism, we fight it with solidarity. So it's intersectional solidarity is actually the way that we use in using that framework and action step of using intersectionality as the framework of we understand that they're intersectionally impacting us. They are trying to take people's healthcare. They are actively taking people's healthcare away. They're actively taking it and making sure that people living with HIV, which they know disproportionately is black and brown, and in the South, they want to dilute that power from all of us. That is a part of that intersection there of where they see that. They're also increasing the criminalization of black and brown people. So as they continue to take away your health care and take away your voting rights act, which takes away your power, and health is, people say health is wealth, but also health is just ability to continue to like live and get through the day. When you take those away, that's diluting your power, and then you're also taking away you're also increasing the criminalization. Well, how we do that is we have to organize, but we also we got to do the education. We got to do the building blocks with our folks. We got to use these. Hey, I see them coming after you. I'm here with you. Like we saw in Minnesota, and we've seen it in many cities across the country, where actually folks came together and said, "Nah, I'm in solidarity with you. ICE, get y'all out of here." Same way, it's like when we're talking and thinking, if for me, is when people are potentially being criminalized around HIV, or being criminalized for drug use or other things, which people are just being able to survive, and engaging in informal economies, like making sure that people have zones where they're able to be safe and people are talking to each other and communities taking care of each other. And then also getting them to understand, okay, now we got to take action and we got to go out there and make sure we get the right people that can actually push those policies in place to make sure that we can stay safe, that we can have proper education, that we can have proper health care, and understanding that impacts on the local level all the way to the national level.
Love that. Dope, dope, dope. That's all I could think about. I couldn't find any other words to say. So Max, I'm gonna actually pass it back to you. To just talk about a little bit, how does voter rights connect to your work with the Save HIV funding campaign?
So thank you for that question as well. As we talked about the intersectionality of how they differently impact folks, HIV funding, which is also connected to larger healthcare funding, is being also constantly under attack that we brought up. And that is one of the important pieces, not just when we think about the ADAP programs that are being under attack in different states, including we've all heard and understood definitely what's going on in Florida, but we've had updates in Texas, Georgia, Iowa, Chicago, and LA around different struggles with the funding pieces. And we're also going to continue to see, as they're doing that, it makes it harder for us to be able to organize, because at times what the thought is on their side is, oh, you're trying to deal with as the muzzle velocity of so many things. This is what Steve Bannon says. He was a horrible person, but he is a strategist. And thinking about how in which you throw so many things at people that they're trying to attack with the attacks on gender affirming care, the attacks on people, even like the further incarceration, the attacks on DEI, the attacks on all of that at the same time. Also understanding that budgets are moral documents. And when you are zeroing out housing, when you're zeroing out HIV funding, you're saying you don't care about these folks. And we have to understand that they're also trying to make it so they can take the funding and it dilutes everyone's access to power. And what I try to do and understand this is uh, uh, it's to understand that we have to use, as I said before, it was like, okay, we understand that the funding piece is a problem. I also understand that funding is also tied to our access to being able to have democracy. So we also have to understand that voting rights and getting people out to vote is important. And we also have to understand that our legislators need to understand, and this is why it's important for us to engage with people that are currently elected officials, but also people that are aspiring to be elected officials, to let them know and understand like why HIV is important, make sure that they're continuously educated around this, and the importance of funding this, because there ain't no borders when it comes down to any disease, and that don't work. Like, oh, we're gonna fund this state or we're not gonna fund this country anymore. That's not gonna work for us in being able to make sure that people live long lives with HIV, to make sure that people don't succumb to different comorbidities because they cut so much to research in different ways. And we want to make sure that people are able to have everything that they're able to have. And we've come so far in the science, but now we're letting the policies, and as we talked about earlier, the political terms of health. It's like we have all the science. It's the politics. They don't want to do it, or they're just putting lip service to it, and they're sending people to different meeting rooms to try to water down what is actually being happening. And what we have to do is continue to call that out, continue to go to the Ryan White. Shout out to my man out in Louisiana. Dorian Gray, and so many others that continue to ring those alarms, but also making sure that we take that to the other side of making sure that people understand the ballot box. It's important to go out there. As Malcolm X says, it's the bullet of the ballot box. I need y'all to go vote. and I'm gonna be having people go vote, go knocking doors this weekend and make it. Because we got to understand that we got to get wherever our people are and understand to educate them, and not just like really like basic conversations, real like understand like and I took this from working on around the 24 election was we got to go deeper into people's understanding of why they don't vote, why they don't feel like it's okay to vote, or like where they don't feel they have access to these elected officials. Because I know many of these members in PWN didn't feel at times that they had access to all these elected officials, and now some of y'all so chummy with them that other folks wish they had the relationships y'all had. So I really want to and you know, because y'all are doing this work, I really just want to like there is power in continually getting people out there, and it is connected to our access to funding because our budgets are moral documents, and we need to hold our elected officials to that connected real thing of saying, oh no, y'all gonna put y'all money where y'all mouth is.
Thank you for that, Max. And also to your point, a lot of people a lot of people choose to vote in like the presidential elections, but they don't know that they should be voting in these local and like general elections, if I'm using the term right. Sorry. But you reminded me of exactly what Kenisha said as far as like what she is seeing, how she is seeing the cuts to funding impact locally because clinics are losing access to free condoms, prevention measures, closing doors. All of that impacts the work that you are doing within the Save HIV funding campaign. And I just remember you all like jumping into action once those PEPFAR cuts started coming out or coming down, impacting folks on a global scale, but really being so advanced in recognizing how this doesn't just impact our siblings across waters and who greatly receive PEPFAR funding, but this has a national impact on us, and we're actually going to see this start to trickle into the states and to the local communities and into the ASOs and the CBOs the way that it has. So exactly, just echoing exactly what you named as far as like who we are voting for and the people that we are putting in positions of power ultimately have an impact on our access to resources and what we continue to receive. So thank y'all for that. Kenisha, is there anything that you wanted to add in relation to what you're seeing on the ground locally, and even like how you are supporting community members, or how has it been in navigating community members who need access to certain prevention measures that they, you know, that funding streams are that we are seeing funding streams dry up around?
So so I'm currently right now I'm paying attention to the chat, and Tana made a very important point in the chat that state and local elections matter. They matter because they dictate what goes on in your city and in your state, and especially on how funding is evenly distributed amongst other things. Because I mean, you can vote nationally all you want to, but you need to pay attention about what is going on with your state, right? Before I get into what what you were saying, what the question is, Antoinette, I want to highlight the fact of um with the help of PW in Louisiana and LCCH here in Louisiana, we were able to pass HB808, which is a modernization bill for people living with HIV, and it was a very monumental moment for us to get this bill passed. Did we get anything? Did we get all the things that we wanted? No. Technically, no. But however, it is a start. It's a start because of the fact that we need to continue the work in order for us to get everything that we need in to fully get proper modernization for into basically HIV criminalization here in Louisiana. Now, going into what you saying, um, basically, like I have been paying attention to a lot of the local organizations as far as like what they're what they're doing, what as far as like um being on the ground, like doing testing events. Like I've talked to like a couple of friends of mine who works for Crescent Care, which is an organization down here in New Orleans, and you know they are like scared of their programs losing funding. They are really scared of their programs being defunded because of the fact that they have been doing like great work in the community, going having movie nights, testing events, testing events where you could get incentives like concert tickets and stuff like that. Basically getting the community um engaged and stuff like that. And with these cuts that they're doing with Ryan White and ADAP and all this and the third, that is going to hurt them tremendous. That is going to hurt them tremendously. And as a person who is who who is and still is a certified HIV tester and counselor, and also who have worked in multiple um HIV led nonprofits, it it is mind boggling the way this government is targeting minorities and people living with HIV. That's why it is important to start doing y'all research on who y'all want to put in office. It is important y'all to do y'all research, engage with people, have the conversations. Sometimes these conversations can be uncomfortable, but I don't give a damn about your comfortability. I'm trying to live. I'm trying to continue to live my life happy and fruitfully, especially as a person living with HIV. I'm trying to continue to live my life happily and fruitfully. So we and that's the problem within our communities, is the fact that we are scared to have the difficult conversation, especially in the Black community. Like I'm tired of the same old stuff being swept under the rug, all this, that, and the third. Y'all don't want to confront the elephant in the room and all this, that, and the third. Look, we gonna confront this elephant in this room, because the fact that nobody is not gonna leave here until we have a solution around here. Because I'm tired of us having these conversations and these conversations being ignored. And the more you ignore it, the more stuff starts to fester. And once more, when it starts to fester, that's when mess happens. So therefore, we need to start having the difficult conversations within our community. Doesn't matter if they get upset, they start acting ignorant and all this and the third. Let them sit in that ignorance. Let them sit in it, because at the end of the day, when it does finally happen to that person, they are going to look back at this conversation and they're going to be like, oh, well, they did say this and this, that, and the third. So we need to start being engaging with our people. We need to start being more engaged with our people, our family, our family circles, our friend circles, our our community. I don't like people like going to the nail salon or the hair salon, you know, having those conversations with your friends while you're sitting in your chair getting your hair done and all this and the third. Like we need to normalize having the difficult conversation, because the comfortability politics of it all needs to stop. It needs to stop, especially in the Black community, because the fact that it has gone on too damn long, and it needs to stop.
And I think what you're naming, Kenisha, is like going hand in hand with what Maxx named about solidarity, and how like a lot of the solidarity needs to take place within our community so we can show up in masses and in the numbers that we need to continue to make this meaningful change. Like, even as they are blocking our community's access to voting rights or ballot or whatever it is, if we continue to show up, if we continue to have the conversations that you're naming, get in depth about what Maxx said about like what's preventing people from showing up to vote, what's preventing people from voting for the issues that are important to me, the issues that are important to my health care. And we have to start by having those conversations within our families sometimes. Because no tea, but those people might not even be voting in our favor either. You know, so really starting in our own families, our own communities, doing the work, getting on the ground, and even what I heard Maxx name about, like, you know, ensuring people go out to Macon. Like, Macon is one of the rural areas here in Georgia. It's in the southern part of Georgia, very rural, and it has a large Black population. But also, you know, they experience some voter suppression as well, being so rural and in the steep South. So thank y'all for that. I think I might have skipped a question, but I think you both can answer this. Maxx, you worked with Black South Rising alongside Vanita and many other Southern leaders and advocates who are organizing in the South, and Kenisha, with you living in the South. And y'all both kind of touched on this, but like, what impact do you see this having on the South as a whole, on other Southern states that are either close, interconnected to you and your organizing, or just in general, the Southern states that Maxx showed on the map?
I'll go ahead and kick us off, but one of the things I think really when we think about this is to dilute the political power of Black people, is to continue to have folks incarcerated without lack of access to voting, lack of access to education, and to just overall, when I think I was like, when you don't have education, you don't have health, you don't have, you're taking away people's power, you're taking the people's autonomy, and you're taking away Black people's ability to self-determine, because you're taking away our actual. And I also want to, you know, this is also an attack both on Black and brown folks, and to dilute our power, particularly in states in the South. And so, but that also means in states that didn't expand Medicaid for the most part, and states that have also further allowed to have increased ICE and increased criminalization of folks. And they also have made it harder for people to even educate around it. This will impact it, and it's also, as we see a remigration of Black folks back to the South, especially after 2020. You saw, because we saw all our rent go up, and one of the things that we continue to think about with all this is like, oh, they're trying to take more resource away from us without actually giving us the resources to build power. And that's what the goal of all of this is. What we also see is the ability for our people to, again, they're starting to, you know, as things become harder for folks got to organize a little bit. Folks got to build a little bit. You got to do a little bit more mutual aid, because you ain't got no choice. And those are some of the things that also that we're also seeing as we build power in some of these spaces. And also some people having a questioning of the system, right? And I think that is also part of the power to transform. Is like, hey, why did we have this not working healthcare, or like this ineffective system at first? What could we build something that is better? I do think those are the other also opportunities for this. And thanks to, as we, you know, migrate, work together. I love there's some folks. I live on the South Side, and there's some folks you know, doing some sustainable farming on the South Side too. That's beautiful to see, as people are seeing these impacts everywhere else, that they say, hey, we got to get it out the mud however we can. So I do see that for folks in the South. I worry that it make it worse before it gets better. But the importance is to see is like, as we also saw, especially as we saw these initial attacks on the Voting Rights Act, like we saw the the redistricting that happened in both Tennessee, and it was tried to do in Louisiana, Alabama, and some more in Mississippi. And was successfully pushed back here in Georgia, but we know they're gonna come back a little bit later with this. Is to see is like people did come out to vote a little bit more in the primaries, and what we'll see in the general midterms later on is to also is to continue to beat that drum to get folks to come.
And Kenisha, I'm gonna pass it to you. But as you're even thinking about how this could impact the South, I want y'all to think about the final question, which kind of plays on what you said, Maxx, about mutual aid and really leaning more into like communities' needs and how we support each other, which is like, how do you plan to recognizing the impact this will have on the South? How do you plan to bring community together or strengthen our community during this time? And Kenisha, I'm gonna pass it to you.
So in Louisiana, we are in the middle of a runoff on both sides of the party. As for the for our U.S. Senate seat. Early voting just recently ended over the weekend. Um, like and the person who used to have the seat will not have that seat come next year. But 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 we need to prevent the people who are trying to gain that seat to get back in that seat again. So what what we need to start paying attention to is the fact of like we need to start being out there. We need to start being out there. Y'all need to start encouraging y'all people. Like start encouraging y'all people, getting y'all people out there to vote. I know like this time is scary as hell. And people like the first thing that's gonna come out their mouth is, oh, my vote doesn't matter. My vote this, my vote that. I mean, if you actually come out to vote, it's going to make a difference. It's going to make that difference. And it's and like especially not like now in Louisiana where like they are trying to where they are they are basically taking our liberties away, and also the fact that like I want y'all to I want y'all to pay attention to this, right? Because there's the number one benefactor on why the Voting Rights Act was gutted the way it was. And it's not just a clause or wording or nothing. It's by one person who currently sits on the Supreme Court, who has been trying for 5 decades, five, to reverse the Civil Rights Act. And we all know who it is. Well, some people know who it is. I know who it is. But for the people who don't know, is Chief Justice Roberts. He's been trying to reverse the Civil Rights Act for years, for decades. And now he basically used us as his test dummy. Correct. Correct. He has been trying to do it ever since he was a law school student. Correct. And he basically used the state of Louisiana as his test dummy. And you got to also, you have to realize the fact of the times that we are sitting in right now. We got a man, we got the Chief Justice who basically said, fuck every black and minority person in this damn country. And has been that way ever since he was yay high tuck grasshopper. Has been that way. Don't want to give no minorities no political power at all, because the fact that they know for a fact that when the midterm elections come up in November, that they are more likely they're going to get their asses kicked. The Republican Party know they're going to get their asses kicked. That's why Donald Trump and everybody and the rest of the far right are scared as hell. They are scared as hell. You done erased majority black districts. You erased majority black districts. You done sat there. You done erased districts out in Texas and Tennessee and all those other places. The one that pissed me off the most was Tennessee, because the fact that Tennessee had completely abolished the only black district that they had. They abolished the whole district that they had, chopped the bitch up in a million pieces like it was a chopped cheese on bun. Like they chopped it up, split it up, and just be like, everybody just spend for yourself. Which is wild to me. Which is wild to me. Basically erasing a whole community of black people, a city that has been historically black, a historically black city. You just basically erased every single voice that was in it. Mm-hmm. That's why we need to start having these conversations. We need to start putting our damn foot down. We need to start putting our foot down and tell them that this has gone on long enough. But basically, this entire session, you've been basically fucking us over. You basically been fucking us over. And at this point, we all know that you are nothing more than Donald Trump's minion. And it's been proven when he gave you that position to be over Greenland. Well, bitch, let's say it like this. You want to be in Greenland so bad, we gonna get your ass up out of there, and you gonna take your family out there to Greenland. I cannot. Take your family out there to Greenland, because we don't want you here. So again, like I said, I admire the people who actually are starting to take action and to start getting these people out of office that don't give a damn about us. And also, we need to also start getting these old ass crooks up out of here too. These people who've been in Congress and have elected officials 20, 25. If you in Congress 15 plus, oh baby, you got to go. You got to go. Get them out. Get them out. Get them out.
Don't even get me started with the Supreme Court.
Hey, we need to. Hey, Justice Roberts, he needs to go. And that girl, I'm not about to say it. I'm not about to talk about Clarence. I'm not about to talk about Clarence Thomas, because the word I was about to get ready to say.
I got a documentary I can send you that I watched recently about it, but we could get into it after the call.
Yeah, we can talk about that after the call.
But anywho,
documentaries about him. They are everywhere.
Many, right? I
Yes,
watched
they
one
are.
of a YouTuber and he was talking about how when the shift happened, where he went from being very movement forward to being conservative.
Yep.
And yeah, we don't got to, we'll get into that another day. So
Also
I just
happened
want
in an early part of his life, like John Roberts, which is an interesting part of the crux of the Supreme Court justices and when they decide to be horrible people.
and if some of this was involved in the shift, because that's
Yeah.
so y'all, I want to give y'all some appreciation love. So I thank y'all so much for showing up today. I know we probably, Kelly, let me know if we have any questions in the chat. I don't know if we have any time to get to the questions because I told y'all the meat where the juiciness lies was in the discussion. Like the slides was just a little backbone, but we wanted to stay here just a little bit longer. We don't have enough time, but I do want to give appreciation love to Kenisha and Maxx for taking the time out of your days to join me on this conversation today. It was so beautiful and thorough and introspectful. Like there's just so many things that I can name, and also like recognizing like this conversation wasn't just for us to talk about the attacks on our lives, because those are very real, but it was also to reinvigorate our power and to remind us of the power that we have within and as a community. I saw it come up many times in the chat as far as like folks who believe like their voice or their vote doesn't have any power, and that is true. Alone, you might not have as much power, but with community and with your collective, we are powerful and we are powerful one. So thank y'all. And I'm gonna pass it to Kelly to just lead us through the Q&A if we have any questions. But if we don't, then Kelly's gonna go ahead and walk us through our next steps.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much, Maxx and Kenisha. I hadn't seen any questions come through on the chat, so I'm going to move us on because I know we have 4 minutes left. So let me go ahead and, oh yeah, Maxx, go ahead.
I did one thing that I think it was Stephen I put in the chat around how in which we combat not just the fear but also like things getting worse quickly is actually continuing to have like the kitchen table conversations, that a lot of the things that folks are being able to do, making sure that we're having those to see how folks are doing, and making sure that we're checking in and expounding who our circles are, so they're taken care of right now to get ready for the next steps. That's a quick piece of that. And I'm also wearing a crop top in honor of one of my favorite PWN members. Much love to Tiff. Love y'all. Thank y'all for having me, for real.
Oh yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Maxx. Thank you, Kenisha. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. Because in the last 3 minutes, I'm going to give you 3 next steps to take. The first thing that I'm going to ask folks in this room to do is to join us tomorrow. PWN, along with the Zero Project, the U.S. People Living with HIV Caucus, and an organization Maxx is involved with, the Save HIV funding campaign, are actually hosting a phone zap. So what a phone zap is, everyone comes on to a call at a specific time. We talk about an issue, and then at the same time, we call Congress and we demand what we need. The thing that's amazing about phone zaps is that we like really gum up the works. Everyone's calling at the same time, so congressional offices are getting a glut of calls on one issue, and they have to hear their constituents. Phone calls right now are immeasurably so much more powerful than emails, even if emails are easier to send. We've heard that offices are not even reading emails at this point. And so we ask you to come tomorrow, hang out with us, make a phone call. If you're nervous, if you haven't done it before, this is a great spot to be in. If you have done it before, come and give other folks the courage to do it as well. When I first did it, my heart was beating so fast. And now I can call and tell a staffer for Fetterman, for McCormick, for Evans, for my folks, what I think of an issue. We're specifically going to be talking about Medicaid work requirements. So there's a specific rule that, long story short, is going to make it harder for people living with HIV and people with other chronic health conditions to maintain their Medicaid, to keep health care. And so we are pushing back hard with everything we have because we know that healthcare is a human right. And I'm going to pause real quick to pass it to Stephen because I see your hand.
Thank you, Kelly. This slide here, is there something that y'all can email with this information so I can copy and paste into a chat? I'm going to be in the Texas HIV Syndicate, which is the Texas-wide HIV planning group meeting all day tomorrow from 9 a.m. until 4 or 3.
Yes.
But I know we have a little break around lunch, and what I would love to do is copy and paste this into the chat and urge folks to follow through on this while you're taking your lunch, essentially, if that's at all possible.
Yes, you got it. I will send it to you directly because I know you and I got your email. And this is going to come out afterwards. I'm just not going to promise it's coming tonight because I'm tired.
Oh,
But
I understand. Thank you.
beautiful. So join us tomorrow for the Phones app. Send it out to your friends and family as well. Really, this is the easiest way to take action. It feels amazing. And then I'm going to ask you to join us for our next Training and Learn for the HIV Votes webinar series. What's coming up next is They Work for Us, understanding the difference between 501c3 and 50c4, what you can do, what you cannot do. This one is going to really talk about how we do voter engagement efforts, how we stay safe while we're doing it, and we make sure that we're following the rules that unfortunately are laid out that right now we have to follow. Well, we've always had to follow them, but this is an important webinar to understand the difference between talking about candidates and pushing folks towards candidates or parties and doing nonpartisan work where you're trying to talk about the issues and motivating folks to vote. So these are different things, and we're going to really break it down. It's a great next webinar. I hope you'll come. Okay. And this one I'm really excited about. So this is our sneak peek. This has not yet been announced. I get to do it. Thank you. Mark your calendars. So on July 15th, we're going to have the official launch of PWN Votes for this year. So this training series is called the PWN Votes Training Series. And that's because this is a little teaser. This is a little taste test of what's going to come. But we are going to be launching more PWN Votes trainings. So make sure you sign up. We're going to be having an updated PWN Votes website. And there's going to be a new PWN Votes toolkit, and this is coming to you on July 15th. We are working, we're like ducks underwater, really swimming, getting ready for that July 15th launch. So I hope y'all put it in your calendar and you'll be there with us. And then how did we do? Let us know, right? This is, again, the beginning of our training series. We want to know, what do you like? What do you not like? What do you want to see more of? Tell us how we did. We love feedback. And then finally, connect with us. If you're not a member of PWN, if you're not an ally, accomplice, if you're not a comrade of PWN, use this QR code. Sign up so that you hear from us, you hear what's going on, and you'll get more information about that launch when it comes. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone for hanging out for 2 minutes. Huge shout out to Maxx, Kenisha, and Antoinette. This was phenomenal. I just loved being in the background to hearing y'all talk. I feel so filled up for a really challenging topic. So a lot of love and appreciation to all of you. And I can't wait to see you in the next one in our webinar series.
Thank you all so very much for having me. Y'all are wonderful. And happy
Yes,
birthday to
thank
PWN
y'all.
again.